number 4, we will get into the administrative reports. First, we have the building or department presentation, and we have Woodlands.
Right. So for our building department presentation, we have Woodlands. We have Katie Mishler, who's oh, she's going to present. You are the presenter. Um, you're up. And if you could speak at the microphone just so the streaming audience can hear you as well, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Katie Mishler. I am one of the Title I reading teachers. We have 2.5-time teachers at Woodlands. We are a targeted school, and which means that our students' population is we have to have more than 40% of free and reduced lunch to be a not targeted school like we are at Shawnee. But since we combined together, we are targeted. So that means we have to test kids to reach the bottom 20% so that they can have Title I services, which is sort of intervention for reading that we do. Right now, I see approximately about 24 students all day long, starting at 7:30 a.m. until I finished today at 2:35 through this afternoon. So it's a lot of work, a lot of progression of kids. Also, when you're targeted, you cannot mix kids in and out, and that's really hard for kindergarten and first grade because they need the experience. And we've noticed that by January, we've had like 4 or 5 kids we could have dropped and added new ones in that are not making the grades. So that's why we switch and test them mid-year and at the end of the year. So we test them 3 times a year. We do all of kindergarten, first and second and third now to find out where they're at, what meets their needs. We also have different activities we are required by the federal law. One is we have to have a family function, so we have game night. We have game night this Thursday for second grade. All of second grade's invited. Last Thursday we had first grade, and the week before that we had kindergarten game night. Third, fourth, and fifth will have their game night in March. We also did Reading Under the Lights as a family-oriented activity in the fall, and we like to do that, and it's a lot of fun for the kids and the family. For the game nights, I use different activities that I've created or I've found or even used pre-made, like Candyland and Chutes and Ladders, but I have them so they have to read words. I put words on there that they should know. Some are higher, some are lower, so I can adjust to kids that come in. I also have high school students come in and help out. The Honor Society has been doing that this year. They've been great with the kids. They look forward to it, have a great time. The parents are having a good time too with them. So, do you have any questions? Do I need to say anything more? Okay.
Perfect. That was good.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so next we have the student board liaison, Lucy Watson, and she's going to talk about some of the activities that we've done at the superintendent's student advisory council. And this is where I'm meeting with groups of students from each of the 3 buildings, Woodlands, McCormick, and the high school. And Lucy and I pick a theme for the meeting, and then we kind of customize it for the appropriate grade level, age level of the kids. So Lucy was at the high school and McCormick, and then I'll tag on about Woodlands. We had to switch the date, and she wasn't able to make it. She was college campus visit, yeah, so that's fine. So go ahead, Lucy.
Okay, so first off, since I'm a senior this year, I will not be here next year. So we have Grant Bauer, who is interested in taking over the student liaison role. So he's sitting in for this meeting. So thank you for coming and being interested. So first, we went to the high school, and the purpose of this meeting was to talk about spaces in the school. So we had like fine art spaces, independent areas, the cafeteria, and then outdoor spaces and athletic spaces. So In these groups, we had the students and partners identify things they liked about the school or things they wanted to add on once we talked about getting a new building and what specifically we want in it. So they talked a lot about for the fine arts having an auditorium and performance space. And then a big issue that they talked about was having the union back. One of the big issues they talked about with that was that students didn't like that they weren't at school all day because they felt like there was nowhere else to be unless they were sitting in a cafeteria. So they were going home instead. So they felt like the togetherness that like the union had was lost this year when that changed. And going off of that with like the cafeteria, they talked about how they really enjoyed the new seating at the school, which was 2 years ago we got the new seating. So they really liked that and maybe like incorporating that again and making it even better than it is now. There weren't really anything about like the hallways or like outdoor spaces, maybe just like brighter, more natural lighting. But then with that athletic spaces, they talked a lot about how maybe like a field house, like how Edison has, or something of that sort for all the sports that they could use in the winter, and better equipment in the weight room. So that was all from the high school. And then at the junior high level, we talked more about classroom spaces and things they wanted to see in there. So one of the issues they talked about was interactive and hands-on learning. So they talked a lot how about the classes they really enjoyed were ones where science classes where they did a lot of labs and they worked in groups. So they talked about how they wanted more of those and to have better materials to work on that. And then going off the materials, they said they wanted better technology and more efficient technology, such as like better internet or better computers, because they felt like sometimes that made their classwork difficult for both them and their teachers. And then also they talked a lot how they like the flexible furniture, such as like standing up desks or like more comfortable desks, so it was easier to collaborate on activities. And that was kind of a lot of what junior high talked about was like the style of learning they like would be like hands-on learning and group collaboration.
Yeah, and then with Woodlands, we talked about schools within the community. So great communities have great schools. We talked about what other elements of a great community, what other elements are necessary to make a great community. And the kids were able to identify, recreational activities, the ice cream or donut shop. Those are things that they like. Family-friendly restaurants, bowling, and different activities like that. The beach. And so then we had students color a picture of a house, so that was going to be their house, and then pick one of these other safety services, hospitals, industry. So color those, and then let's put it up on the map. And so Miss Ryan's high school art class, they created this map of the community for us, and they did a much better job than I anticipated, than I had expected, not anticipated, and that I could have done. But you could see how the kids, they were very cute in that, a lot of them were arguing over how close they could put their house to the water because they wanted to have that waterfront view. And then like over here where it says farm, there's a hospital right up on the road. And I asked them, why are you putting the hospital way out here on the road? They said, well, when the patients are recovering, they can look out and like enjoy the nature. And I said, okay, I like that. And you can see over to the west of that map, they have some of the factories and whatnot. So the kids were aware, like, you don't want to live next to a factory, right? You have to have those in your community, but you don't want to be right next to them. And then they do have, 2 schools, and those are near homes and things like that. So while some argued for having their house near the water, then when those water spots were gone, then they put their homes either next to the ice cream shop or near the school. And then you can see down here on Avery Road here, there's this one house, and that student's like, I'm not by anything. So they all decided to put a park there so that student could have her friends over and enjoy the park. So it was a cute activity, but really it came back to great schools are part of a great community. And so you have to have that integration and that collaboration with the other entities. And the kids, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, they figured it out. And so I think we're doing good work, and so we're heading in the right direction. But And thank you, Lucy. Do you guys have any questions for Lucy?
Thanks. I love the report. Thanks for spending your time, Lucy, and Dr. Chapman, to go in touch with the students and solicit their ideas too. Okay. Yeah.
First of all, I want to thank Katie. I knew she was going to split the part, but Katie's doing a great job. As she mentioned, going from the school-wide model for federal programs through title from Shawnee and then combining the two, we did dip under that 40% threshold. So we are back to targeted. And it just has some different things that folks aren't used to. No, you just can't swap kids. You got to test them, you got to rank them, and things like that. So they're doing a great job. And Katie is on track to finish certification for, she'll be our district go-to guru, if you will, mandated, required by law, for students who, after the Tier 1 assessment for the dyslexia measure, if they show tendencies and need progress monitoring, Katie's going to be the one that is going to help author those plans and do the progress monitoring, those things like that. So right now we have North Point that we are using that service for. And I say we are using the service, but it doesn't actually, we're using the literary stuff, but the actual writing of the plans comes into play after this next benchmark. So lots of moving dates and moving targets in this legislation. I feel like we've talked about it for a while, but the action steps are here. So with the implementation of Amplified for both the third grade reading guarantee and the dyslexia legislation, the law changed where we have to do that Tier 1 screener post January 1st, but before January 1st of the following year. So in conversation, what is best practices? So we're using the February date, so it's early, right? So we anticipate we will have probably an uptick of students because you're testing children who have been in school for 6-ish months, right? Kindergarten. So get an early start with them, right? And progress monitoring right out of the gate. So we felt that that was better than waiting till December and coming to parents and say, hey, we've noticed this. We can do something about it sooner, by doing it in February. So Marcy Henry will be in the district Thursday to start that process with us. And it should go well. But I just want to say, Katie and Sarah and Molly, who's new to the position this year, are doing a great job with title services. Sure.
The percentage at 40% stuff like it's a threshold, but where are we now? What month is that?
Oh my
Part
gosh.
of that to we still feel like there's opportunity for us to do we feel like we're accurately capturing everyone? Feels like we still feel like we have some opportunity there.
We always have opportunity, but in the same regard, we make the applications available, we make the resources available. It's up to people to fill them out. So, when late charges are sent, we remind them, here's an opportunity, here's an avenue. Amy does a great job when families are registering, here's some services you might qualify for, the whole 9 yards. So, we're trying, we put it out there. Some of them are direct certified, they come through CHAD. So, it's all hands on deck trying to scrape together those percent. So it's hovered there for a number of years. So we, because we were established at Shawnee when it dipped under, Columbus allowed us to keep the tag because it was an existing program. They probably should have taken it off, but we're small peanuts compared to other districts that they're chasing. But so we're always looking, trying to get resources and whatnot. But and then, as you know, the science of reading, along with the dyslexia legislation, I just wanted to update you that we do now have guidance on what that professional development is going to consist of for all staff. That is also a change from the dyslexia legislation. So the coursework is starting to come out through DEW. There are some things that we need to work through with Mike. When they say all staff, they mean all staff, but then they delineate who does what and who gets what. So again, with SST2 here on Friday, we talked to their literacy specialist about potential for using the PD days in November to knock that out because everybody has to have it by the end of next school year. So The kicker is some of the work that we have done doesn't count. Some of it does. So we're going to go person by person to say, this is what this person has, this is what this person needs. So it'll be good stuff. It'll be good things for everyone, but just the fact that there's, with our reading adoption also coming, it's just a lot. So, and where we're at with the reading adoption, the samples for the core curriculum are at Woodlands and at McCormick. Some have been unboxed, and some people are like, I said, I know. So we are actually Friday, Monday, and Tuesday running the IST schedule, so that kids will go with Sandy Shoot for SEL lessons while I get the staff for those grade levels, and we're going to get to it. We've got the rubrics ready to go. Some people already have ideas and thoughts, but based on those conversations, then we will invite the salespeople out. So the salespeople like to come out before we go through the samples, and they want to show you what their stuff is all about. And quite frankly, any canned core curriculum comes with a lot of stuff. Do we actually need all the stuff? Sure don't. Do we need all the bells and whistles? Sure don't. So it's less overwhelming for staff to, you know, they're experts, they have the degrees, they have the certifications. Let's get our take on it. And quite frankly, if this doesn't meet what we need to do, we don't need to wait the sales call, sales pitch, all of that. So I hope to get those going, and then staff is still interested in making some visits. So we'll get that going based on those conversations. And fingers crossed, at the April board meeting, I'll have recommendations for you. So we can get it ordered. Mike's been great about that. So.
Okay. Mr.
Great.
Lindarius,
Fun
treasurer
part, right?
report. Yeah.
Okay, so in your financial packet, you have the financials for January 2024. That's 7 months through the fiscal year, so we should be right around 58% for revenue and expenditures. Revenues for all funds was at 57% as anticipated, and the general fund was at 50%. But we'll tell you, just looking forward into February, we did get a tax advance, so that number should come up to probably where it should be come February. Expenditures were at 52% of all funds, and 52% for the general fund as well. Donations for the month of January, we had $1,092. They were received for a scholarship fund, a lunch fund, and the All for Everyone Foundation. Underneath my report also, there's 4 amended budget and purpose statements, as well as a sales project potential for your approval. And then I wanted to update you guys, so I was able to join OASO successfully, finally, and they have set me up with a mentor. So her name is Shauna Baker. She's the treasurer for Western Reserve. So I'm looking forward to that. We have our first meeting Friday via Zoom, so I'm not sure what the first meeting is going to entail, probably more introductory kind of things, but I'm looking forward to it, you know, having another resource. So I want to let you guys know about that.
For that update, any questions? No? Okay. And Dr. Chapman.
Right. So first, items under recommendation from the superintendent. We have a laundry list of second reading for board policy updates, and those policy updates are they're stemming from alignment for recently passed legislation. So it's really legal updates that affect the policy. Then also there's a transportation shared service. There's 2 there. Other districts around us also transport students to similar locations, and so through shared service we can share those costs and safely transport students to and from their programs that are outside of our district. There's a recommendation for the McCormick auditorium improvements. This is something that is really stemming from Axel Noble, so that's a local business of ours, and they have a community engagement program where they support both financially and through service improvements to the community. And so when they met with Julie and I, man, that was last summer. Yeah, they said, you know, we really are looking for a project that improves the schools, but also an aspect of the schools that have a connection to the community. And so we talked a little bit about sports complexes that we have, stadium and gyms and things like that. But I said, you know, we have a lot of support from boosters and other entities with those. Where we need some support is in the arts. So looking at this community engagement program that they have, there are resources available to help with replacing the well-worn drapes and system of pulleys for the curtain at the theater, and then also looking at making some improvements within the theater as far as the runway carpet areas, which right now some of them have snags that are trip hazards and kind of dangerous. But it's on there. Again, it's a community partnership to be celebrated, and there is recognition that the potential life of McCormick as far as a school for the district might be limited, but the theater element may continue on past our use of the school, and ultimately, even if we continue on that aggressive timeline that we're working on, we'll be at McCormick for the next 4 to 5 years, so we'll get benefit out of it for that. So that's on there. And then the next item is this Arcadia Tower Infrastructure Group. So it's an agreement that this Arcadia Tower company goes out and markets our available land for a cell phone tower. And so they talk with Sprint, Verizon, other carriers, and seek their interest in improving cell phone tower connectivity. And really, from us, they just need a 40-foot by 40-foot piece of land. And so on the agreement, we have the 3 school properties that we own, and also the bus garage. And really, the bus garage has a section. It's like a piece of pie, and so the center of that pie, or that little narrow part, has potential to be a good cell phone tower area. But talking with other superintendent friends who have previously signed on with those Arcadia Towers, they say, yeah, you sign on, and then they have to start marketing to seek that interest. So there's no guarantee of a return. So this is the first step in exploring that option as a potential revenue source where we're leasing or renting our land for some return on investment for that. And then the other items are personnel items, so certified, classified, and supplemental items, some coaching for spring sports that we have already started. So any questions on items?
The Arcadia Towers, given the massive facility and kind of the open terms on what we may do with property, come on, right? Like, how does entering, let's say we got what we wished for, we enter into a zero broker, we enter into a relationship with them, they find us something that's interesting in putting a tower, say at Woodlands and McCormick, or out here, could impact our ability to then sell the property, 5 or 10 years from now, if that were not.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, that's a good question. That's one that, if we had that offer, we'd be consulting with legal to make sure that it doesn't hamper us from making a property, making a different use for that property. And if the answer is no, you're locked in then for the next 20 years, then we could always reject that offer of putting a tower on a property. So at this point, it's just exploration, and with the amount of time it takes to through the exploration process, I'm hopeful that then we'll have a better handle on our master facility plan, that it would time up that we're like, no, actually that doesn't work for us because of this, or yes, it does, and so we can move forward with it. Oh, for sure. Yep. No, it would take board resolution. Yep. So, for sure. The only other thing I want to talk about is, as I guess like a preview of the facility talk we're going to have to do here. So just a reminder to the board that in January 15th, Martin Luther King weekend, our high school gym, it has 2 heater units, and one of those units started pouring water out. And when the technician came out, he identified multiple holes in the coil. And so we've been without the second heater unit in the gym since that mid-January. And we are replacing the coil that's there. Because of the age of the equipment, it's a custom rebuild of the coil. And the general cost of that, just for the piece, is $10,000, and then plus time and cost of installation. This is a similar project that we had to do last year at Woodlands in the gym there. So last year, the Woodlands gym was without heat. We were able to open all the doors and have fans blowing the warmer air from the hallways into the gym to maintain its usability. But that also had a coil rebuild, which I think was 10 plus the time cost of time. And then here in February, again, it's like a holiday weekend. So February 12th, both Woodlands has two boilers that heat the facility. Both of them failed to turn on. And so our custodial staff was able to identify that, and they started working to figure out what the problem was with our maintenance staff. We ultimately had to call an outside vendor in to help with that repair. And so Chad and his staff was keeping me updated throughout the morning and throughout the day, because if the heat wasn't going to be returned, then that Tuesday we would have had to have a calamity day at Woodlands. So we had school, we were able to get the boilers working, and I asked the maintenance staff, I said, okay, so is it fixed or is it patched? And he said, oh, it's patched. So we are working to get quotes on how to best repair that unit, the two boiler units in there. And really, we're getting quotes for a better than just a patch repair, all the way through a full replacement. And now we have a new unit that can cover us for the next 15 to 20 years. So we're going to look at what those prices are. Ultimately, again, today, the two boilers were not firing at 5:30 5:30 in the morning when the custodian came in. He was able to get one unit up and running. The other, we couldn't. Did we ever get it running? No. So the other unit was down, and is it still down? Yeah. So, I guess I just share this story because while I have to consider weather events for calamity days and fog for delay, we also have our facilities, and the staff are working hard to maintain the facilities we have. But we are really beyond that point of having functional buildings that we have confidence in. So we want our students and staff working in an environment that's conducive for learning and safe and all that. And they still, there's no one in danger per se, but we're getting closer and closer to that as we go. And then also with this Woodlands boiler failure and repair, if we had a better idea of what our master facility planning was taking us to, it would be, okay, we need to do a patch that'll get us through a year or two or three, or hey, we're going to do an investment that'll get us through the next 15 to 20 years, and we would have that which aligns to the plan, as opposed to us trying to make isolated decisions here while we're working on this master plan here, and those two might not line up. So I just share that. And that's really all I have, unless there's any other questions.
So wasn't there a list that the previous, maybe the person in charge of building operations put together, I feel like, things that needed to be done for capital improvement process? It is, and I'm trying to, yeah, it was before anybody was in any of these roles. I'm just thinking, I'm just flashed to that as at one point somebody took a comprehensive look, but it would have been like maybe spring of 22. I can look through and see if we can find it in old meetings. I'd just be curious. I don't know like how comprehensive it was, and certainly we're 2 full years out now. Some things may have been taken care of in the meantime. Other things may have be added on to there. But something like that. I don't know if we keep something like that and keep it running, but
I would say I can explore if that report exists and where it is. We may have lost some in the flood, but also, I continue to go back to that OFCC report from 2021,
sure,
and then AVG's validation of that report, and so I wonder how, timeline-wise, where does this other report fit in, and detail-wise, where does that report fit in compared to what OFCC did for us? So
Yeah, and it wasn't by any means like a comprehensive report like that. It was just the person in that role stood there and said like, and these are the things that need to be done now. These are the things that kind of we're patching. These are things that are going to be on the horizon that we'll need to take a look at. Yeah, it was. So anyway, yeah. Just
Yeah, we can
but
look at
yeah,
that.
all the moving parts. And the sooner we know what our long-term plan is, will help us be able to make the decisions in the short term. So the funds to cover repairs like this come out of the P&I.
Permanent improvement, yeah.
And there's I think it was right before Betty left. She did a capital spending plan. She shared with you guys. So I was gonna reference that, something like that.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Any folks there? All right. So then we will take a look at the consent agenda. Open the floor for a motion to approve the consent agenda items listed under sections 5 through 7.
Mrs. Henners,
Yes.
Dr. LaFay, Mr. Rager, Mrs. Hartman.
Yes. All right. For discussion and action, format for community engagement.
All right, so sort of behind your shoulder there, I have this slide. It says facility tasks to address this spring. So number one is a timeline overview, and ADG is here tonight, so they can help provide that. I think here tonight we should continue conversations about funding source options. Mike Bear gave his presentation at the work session 2 weeks ago, and we've had time to digest it. There are some options, so it's not just a single path, and so we can talk about that. Number three, and I'm sure ABG will touch on this too, as far as site proposals, so locations, proposals. We have currently 3 properties that could be considered. We own the bus garage as well, but we can't put a school. And then there's also, is there other land options to consider? 4 would be the scope of project. So really 4 and 2 kind of yin and yang together, right? So we have to figure out what our funding capacity is, and then how does a scope of project fit within that funding capacity? Or maybe we need to figure out the scope of project, and then how do we fund that? Number 5 would be those community engagements, activities, those 3 meetings that we have scheduled. Again, the schedule can change. And again, talking about just the structure of that. Do we see it as a series where someone would need to attend all 3? Do we see them as 3 standalones where you get generally the same content at one and the other, so attending one is sufficient? What are we doing? How are we actively listening to the community at those events? And then the last, if we want to, if we have time, community levy campaign committee. So again, the state auditor has given his interpretation of the laws that currently exist when it comes to school levy campaigning and the limitations that treasurers, superintendents, and board members have. His interpretations really push it to the community-based levy campaign, and so again, maybe not something that has to spend a lot of time on tonight, but something that I think we need to keep on our minds as we're progressing forward with this work. So we want to start with ADG presenting a timeline. So I know I continue to operate that our goal is to go to the ballot in November. And I continue to operate that way because if through the process we get to a point where we're like, we're not ready, or we don't think the community's ready, or any reason, we can always pause and not go to the ballot. I know we have to have a resolution passed by July 8th, and then a second one passed a month later. But even then, if you're still like, if the feeling is, hey, we're still not ready, we can pull our ballot issue. So I know Edison did that 2 years ago, and then later they went back to the voters. So not that we're Edison, but it's possible to do those things. So again, I continue to move forward thinking that that is our goal, and if our goal has to move, then that's fine. I would hate for our goal to move because we didn't have enough due diligence to do our work, I guess is what I'm saying. So, but if ADG, do you guys want to give us a timeline like, hey, yes, if we want to go to the voters in November, And if you can use the microphone just so that the home audience can hear too. Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Syed. I am with Architectural Vision Group, 23850 Sperry Drive, Westlake, Ohio. Just for the people around. Okay, like Dr. Redman said, if you want to go for a November bond issue, you have to have to the ballot by August 1st or 2nd. That's the timeline for ballot language to be ready and to be filed with Board of Elections. So you work backwards for that. So if August is the deadline to go to the November ballot, you work backwards, and there's two board meetings which are going to take place. I think resolution has to be passed. Those are to be happening in July. So that's that. Then if before that you have to go to the state auditor to get funding, whatever your funding is, ministry finalized. So so that happens in June sometime. They take a good time, 2 3 weeks, to get that to you. So so we are back in May now. So whatever project that is, whatever funding source is going to be, whatever the scope of the project, that all has to be finalized by end of May. That's the job deadline in terms of, and we can put it in writing and uh, for 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 project which is going to take place on these sites. If you are looking at other options or other sites, then it's a different timeline. That because what you need to do is these sites which you already have, you already know what the buildings on it, you already know what kind of land it is, easements, any underground issues, you already know that. But if you are going to look for other sites, that takes 2 to 3 months just for the due diligence. First, you have to identify what site, whatever those sites are, whether it's in the city or the township, whatever is available. So that takes another at least 3 months, just to get people out there to do the survey, to do the geotechnical investigation. You want to make sure that the land is good, you can build on it, it's not a landfill or something like that. So that due diligence takes 3 months at least. So, and the cost of the land is there. So that takes care. If we start today, that takes us to May anyway. If we're looking at another site and how much it's going to cost and what does the report say. So there are two different timelines we are talking about. One for the November, and if you are going with the existing sites, and we have, again, the board has to make a decision which site you want to prefer or your preferred site. But we can look at other sites also if the board has in mind, and that's not the timeline changes to next spring. No.
How many acres, and I'm sorry if this was mentioned in a past meeting, if there were a single campus, roughly how much acreage, and I recognize putting in athletic complexes
Yes.
changes that.
So what the state of Ohio says is, and that doesn't mean that you have to go with that, but they're saying 35 acres plus 1 acre per 100 students. So if you have, say for example, in our situation, we have enrollment of 1,200. So they are saying it needs to be 47 acres. But that for the stadium, for athletic fields, for baseball, softball, practice fields, all that. None of the schools which we have done in recent past, very few. There are which has that kind of land. But so that is preferred. That doesn't mean that if you can have, if you are not building stadium or you building stadium 20 acres, 25 acres. uh, We have done smaller than that. But we are doing a project in Ohio City. So, in Ohio City, so you don't have any land over there. You
So between, I think between Woodlands and this site, we have about 44 acres.
So
Between just the two
Woodlands,
sites.
yeah, so Woodlands is a little over 37 acres, and the high school campus is a little over 29 acres.
Is Woodlands on the case 20?
Yeah, so we have 19 farmland acres, plus the land that the baseball, softball, and school
Okay.
parking lot currently sit on. So that's 66 total acres there, and there's just under 10 acres, 9.6 at McCormick.
I was walking out at Woodlands yesterday, both around the softball field and then down the trail. And yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a lot of land out there. But what jumps out to me is from looking down, looks like you could plop some schools there. But when I look out north, they're all neighborhoods adjacent there. And the question to me, and I've said this before, the civil engineering part of this is to me the most, I think, challenging aspect if we look at our current sites here at the high school and at Woodlands. How do we get traffic like in and out without disrupting, I mean, like family homes that are and some of them are already disrupted, so but the thought of, Woodlands, we've heard a lot of feedback about ingress and egress at Woodlands just from combining Shawnee and Woodlands this year. If we got what we wish for and put a single or a option on the menu and put a single campus there, I'm just I don't have a civil engineering mind, so it's hard for me to understand how that would work, just in that practicality.
know, board's desire, we will do what we can do, and we can study that. For you to take a look at it, and I've looked at it on our part, but we have not looked at in terms of like, because we don't know whether you are talking about 612, 312, what, because it all changes with the size of the building too.
It's a little like chicken and eggy, though, right?
Yeah.
Because it's hard for us to, I mean, if we say, okay, get a single campus, and you say, well, okay, but you can't get roads in there, it's hard to, but to me, it starts with what's possible from an ingress and egress standpoint. Because if the answer is you have to keep two buildings, then that makes our decision easier in terms of if it's, yeah, you could get one building in, but here's what we would need in terms of establishing a roadway or changing traffic patterns. Obviously, we have some influence over that, but we also don't have control over that ultimately. So,
Sorry.
Please.
You have to be careful there too. You probably work with the state because their project coming up is going to put roundabout on each side of the highway and at Route 6 in Rye Beach. So there's going to be 3 roundabouts, right in that area. And then but the Parkway entrance isn't that far from that where that would be. So you probably have to reroute that whole thing to come off the roundabout by the highway or something. But
you're like envisioning the poor school bus.
south
like,
of Goodwill there
yeah.
or whatever or something. But Yeah. so that's going to impact that whole thing too. So.
Yeah, we can take a look at it, we can take a look at for 2 building options, we can take a look at for 1 building option and see, again, we have not gone into that detail yet, but we can look at that. If that,
I can throw out just to the board, and I don't know if, I mean, I appreciate the ambitious timeline. I guess I question whether it's realistic when we're talking about the complexity of even with the sites that we have versus studying maybe the idea of, you know, the township. I mean, at the end of the day, we're not, our district doesn't just serve the city of Huron. It equally serves a population that both resides in the city and in the township. And we know that we have, essentially greenfield in the township that you could
have no limits on how roads go in and out, or at least fewer limits on how roads go in and out. So, and I say all that, we're talking like you need to have it pinned down by May. It's, for all intents and purposes, March. It just doesn't seem, from my vantage point, realistic. And I think this is a community who's waited 50, 60 years to get new schools. Like, it seems like we ought to take a page out of Edison's book and, like, by the way, to my knowledge, haven't passed. So to slow down, make sure that we do, like, get the best information, really educate our community and engage our community, and then when we go with our best foot forward rather than rush. That's just my
Yeah,
personal take on
I'm
it.
smiling as you say that because since I've been here for 19 months now, like when I first walked in the door, there was like this sense of our facilities are in rough shape. We need to do something now. And so I've been feeling a little bit like drinking from the fire hose as far as we got to get this work going. If the feeling is all that's true and we want to get it done right, so more time is needed, then I can turn the spigot down on that fire hose and be able to like take a deep breath here. But really, I'm here at the service of the board, the district, and the students we serve. And the buildings aren't getting less old with every passing day and every passing month, which is why I have this sense of urgency. And when some of these big ticket items start coming in, like new coils for a furnace, that if we had the plan in place, we would know that's a good investment, or let's figure out something else because there's a bigger project on the horizon. But yeah, no, I mean, I'm feeling the sense of time pressure as well. So I'm open to whatever direction we need to go so we get it done right. And again, I also don't want to go too many times to the voters just to get a no, when I'd rather take the time to hear from the community and understand what those needs are and understand what the financial reality is that the community can get behind and support. So it's an easy yes for the voters, and we can continue moving forward with the project as opposed to getting stuck in the mud of like, okay, we'll refine it again. Like, let's just try to come with the right proposal the first time, and we can keep moving. So.
And just to finish that out, I mean, James, and I think that's a fair point on the. I think doing something. I'm not proposing like let's pause, but let's like kind of stretch, so that we're really fully exploring all the options, really fully exploring what the community wants. Um, being realistic about what those price tags are, and then when we drill down, it's super. And then these options on funding, it's super clear what the decision is in front of the community, right? I think there's opportunity. William's here. I think there's opportunity to collaborate with the city if they're willing. When you talk about, Lucy mentioned like field houses and things like that. I know that the folks from the Parks and Rec department have been working on probably overlapping initiatives. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there too. I just don't think there's a realistic way that it gets done well this year. With the ultimate, like, no, by August we know exactly what we're asking of the community. That's my 2 cents.
If I may add, when you're looking at just for everybody's information, when you're looking at that property, the most important thing is utility. Because the EPA, if you don't have sanitary, you don't have enough pressure, if we don't have sanitary lines over there to hook up our school over there, that becomes a problem because the EPA is very reluctant in giving any wastewater treatment plant permits now. They are very reluctant, So just for everybody's sake, so as long as the utilities are there, the public, obviously safety services, we have to look at, and then we can look at other easements and other things. The most important thing is the utilities, because driving roads are expensive to build. access to the property is important and the utilities are important. That's the most important thing.
Have these other thoughts as we go.
Timeline in general? Or are we kind of just skipping around and
The timeline is we're pumping the brakes so we can get more information as far as like land options and things like that. Then I guess that's what we're doing. But I need to know from the board if that's what we're doing.
I can't answer for the board, but I can say I think we keep a momentum going. But I think if we're discovering things, because right now it seems like the quickest and easiest is look at the two places that we already own, where we already have structures, and what can we do with all the vacant land that we have there? And is that updating these buildings? Is it building new beside it and then tearing it? That seems the easiest, quickest answer. But I don't know if that, as we evaluate these other things, as we hear from the community, if that's what everybody's thinking makes the most sense, just because in the name of expediency.
It seems to me like, can we stick with the timeline we have until we run into something that is slowing us down? Like if we go to the community engagement meetings and then people are raising points, or we are having a hard time meeting with the city or whatever, and some things are slowing us down, then maybe we need to push this back. But there's no reason we can't target it now and keep our momentum going.
I kind of agree with that. At least these next 3 meetings we have with the public, that, I mean, we haven't really heard from too many people. I mean, it's some of the same people in the audience each time.
But we
Yeah,
love
and thanks
you.
for coming. Like,
Thank you for being
but you know, how much support is there, you know, for how big of a project, and even just some of those questions from more of the community is probably needed. So we need to really give people at those 3 events in March, and we could probably make that decision if we slow it down or keep going. I mean, if you look at a map of the city area, the only spots to really put schools are the ones we own. I mean, there's not, for the adjacent land to Woodlands, there's not really a green space there. I mean, if you'd go on a satellite view and just start looking around, so then your other options are the township. Now, James and I talked about this a bit, and there are concerns when you do that for, you know, transport, biking, walking, you know, how do we balance all that too? So, you know, like,
Well,
like
the
you just
folks
said,
in
on
the
the ones
township-
we have, if we want to look at that, we should keep at least talking about it and going. If we're going to look at another site and want to move to the township or other options, then that's going to definitely stretch that out.
Yeah, I would note the folks in the township work on those transportation issues. I mean, they're faced with this transportation.
Right.
As a kid who grew up in the township, you know, you had to figure out how to get to school in a different way than kids who lived in the city, right? So I guess the question I'd ask back to our friends at AVG is, let's say we say with the simplest Woodlands High School site, go back to the question of ingress and egress. Is that going to involve some time and study to be able to answer the simple question of how's everybody getting in and out if we build either a single campus or 2 campuses between our existing sites?
We looked at it, you know, when we've been looking at it, you can tell there's the first thing that that the district should do is get a survey to figure out what easements already exist on that land so that we can solve the potential traffic issue.
That land being Woodlands, like
Yeah.
the Woodlands site?
Woodlands, correct. Yeah. I think, you know, if you do a comprehensive survey, you'll see if there are any easements, because there is some sort of
highway.
There's the rails to trail, the former like electric railroad. There was a utility that's now a trail that crosses there, and then you start getting into the right of way for the road that joins up with Route 2.
Because once you have that, then you can start to sketch out potential building footprint, where it would go, where the existing building is, and then do site circulation off of that. But there needs to kind of be a little bit of understanding, and I guess I would say, you know, the district feels confident that that's a good plan. I would think to recommend going that route. You know, if you feel like that's a good option because you already own that land and there's already a school there, then it would make sense to that be your next step.
What's the time and cost? Yeah, well, hold to the end of it. But say ballpark, what's the time and cost involved with that type of? By the way, I fully agree with everything you're saying about moving forward with March. I'm not talking about an either or, but on that piece of it,
Is it an Ulta ACSM survey that has to be done?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
It takes,
Daughter of a surveyor here.
you are?
I'm sure record searching.
Okay. So that takes at least 6 to 8 weeks, you know, for them just to get the survey. People are busy, they cannot just get out next day, you know, so it takes 6 to 8 weeks right now. That's what we are seeing on the project, just to get the survey. The cost I would be not, I won't know. It is going to be in over $10,000 or whatever, you know, that's for sure.
thank you.
Seems like, you know, even if we are maybe entertaining the idea of viable property in the township, it seems like doing our due diligence with the current property makes sense anyway. So this to me seems like something we should maybe get moving on regardless.
So Jody is participating. She's watching the Zoom. She asked if we could call her in. So that phone's on speakerphone with her. Jody, can you hear us? She might be on delay with the Zoom.
Sketch out building footprint, where it would go.
Yeah, there's a delay. This one.
But there needs to kind of be
Sure. But I think
She
it's
needs
the
to turn
stream.
off the Zoom. Yeah. I was thinking the same, Beth, that if there's some due diligence, I mean, if it comes back and there's some easement that is not able to be vacated in the middle of the property, then it's not, yeah. Or you for your feedback to say, there's not a lot we can do here. Just have to leave this wide swath open.
Looks good on paper, you know, or on the Google map, but until we know what is there, we can't.
Is that good initiative?
Survey?
Yeah.
To do a survey.
So we,
Just regular contracting.
we work with several surveyors. We can ask them to give us a fee quote.
That's something we can go ahead and like empower James and Mike to go ahead and execute on up to a certain dollar amount, so we don't lose time.
Yeah, so I think like any other procurement, if it's under 50,000, we can proceed with it. Yeah. So I don't think special action is needed.
I mean, is it worth doing for this site as well, do you think? And we know we have like a right of way running through it. We don't know what utilities might be along there for utilities and
We were talking about this evening as we were coming, driving to the site, that is this road owned by the city or owned by you, or what are the potential of this site too? We were just talking among ourselves
sure.
This evening. So we don't know over here what is yours and what is owned by the.
So it really tends to figure out. Sense to me.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, like you said, if there's some obvious no-goes, you might as well identify them so that we can make good decisions.
But this is sounding good. And then, so Syed, you guys will have this to me by Thursday? No, I'm just kidding. No. Okay.
Go ahead, Jody.
Okay. Hi, thank you for letting me come in remote. Sorry I couldn't be there in person. I heard the discussion about pumping the brakes or going in a different direction. And I don't really think we need to pump the brakes per se. I think we just really need to educate our voters well. I don't think we've done that well in the past with our levies, especially if we're thinking about possibly entertaining an income tax levy or doing a half and half income tax real estate tax levy. I just think we really need to take time to engage our voters and educate our voters and be extremely transparent about this process. That's just my 2 cents. I think keeping the momentum is key, and I think we're doing that, but I think just education, community involvement, community discussion is really important.
Yeah, agree. I've had a couple people say to me recently, well, you already know what you're doing, just get it done already. And I'm like, I don't know what meetings you go, like, I'm on the board. I don't know what path we're taking. And part of it is going through seeing what we need to do for due diligence for existing properties. Is this going to be something that moves to a property that maybe we don't own right now? Is it one campus? Is it multiple campuses? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know a path forward, but it's something that I think we all have to participate in to make the decision together, to get the information together so that ultimately, yes, it's a board decision, but this is every stakeholder has input at this point. And I guess I want to make sure people know that. I sit on the board. I don't know what this path is. We're open to it. So
Some of the other things.
I mean, I think that and maybe you guys have already discussed this, but I think given the age of our community, asking some of the people in our community that are on fixed incomes, I just have a really bad feeling about that. I think the more we engage people, the more we engage different people groups, different age groups, the more we get people into our schools. They need to see what we're talking about. We can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but until people see it and see the repairs and see the things that need to be replaced, like myself, walking through the high school last week, I graduated in 1985, and there's not a lot that's changed in that high school since I graduated in 1985. And I think once you get alumni and people in our community in our schools to see what needs to be updated and why it's so important to go down to one building or two buildings rather than operate three buildings, we're kind of just talking and not educating.
Yeah, I mean, going back to kind of this survey piece, I think it starts with what's possible, right? And identifying what's possible, and then from there, because yeah, Jody, I fully agree with you, but I think it's also giving the community something to like envision, and I get going back to like chicken and eggs. You know, I know when we talked about this with Baird 2 weeks ago, it was kind of like, well, you get the money first, and then you do the plan, and to me, I think the community's got to have an understanding of what they're being asked to pay for. Maybe not like what color the desks are or, you know, what material the floor is. That's details. But generally speaking, like, what value will this add to the community? If I'm, to Jody's point, I'm a senior citizen and maybe I don't have kids or grandkids in me, what does this do for me in my life in a very real way, not just like some, you know, over kind of like detached way. So I think there's a lot of that needs to be done, but starting to with the practical, like, well, it's possible, you know, and keeping in mind too, and I stress this again, we serve a district that is in two jurisdictions, a township and a city. And I just want to be careful because, again, as a kid that grew up in the township, and the township was a lot smaller population-wise than in the 70s and 80s than it is today. Like, a lot of times the township was kind of forgotten or almost like second class in, you know, these types of decisions. And I think we want to be careful to make sure that that's not the case this time around.
I 100% agree. And I think I don't want to paint anyone in a bad light, but I think unfortunately in our last couple levy cycles, we've been painted in a really bad light because we haven't been open and transparent and educated voters. And I think people have felt, or there's been this underlying feeling that things were trying to be pulled over on voters, that things were trying to be done underhandedly or secretly. And that's what we cannot do with this levy. We cannot do that.
Yeah, and I think it's the ask of the community. And before that is the plan that the district is putting forward. Before that is a decision on what the plan is going to be. And I guess that's where I want everybody to kind of back up, because what I hear from people is they're assuming we already have a plan and we already have a decision and we just need to implement it. And we're not, we don't. This is the backing way up, and this is getting input and being open and transparent about getting the information to be able to make a decision, to be able to form a plan, to be able to go to something concrete and make an ask of the community. That's where we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
And on the point about, I know Cindy mentioned May is when you go to the voters. I will tell you, and I'm speaking just for myself, and maybe it's one of those people who raised concerns about transparency in the past. I don't feel good about asking the voters for some $80 million investment in anything other than a general election or maybe a primary, but something where a significant voter turnout would be expected. That the days and age of going and finding where's the least amount of people who will vote and the most amount of people who will vote a certain way, like that just does not, it hasn't been successful lately in this community, and it doesn't feel like the right way to engage a community on something that's going to be like literally hit everyone as hard as it would. We're asking everyone to make a significant investment, and they should all have a voice to the extent possible. So I would say May to me would be a non-starter. August would be, I don't even know if you can do this in August anymore. I think you can unless the state decides you can't, right? Like the last time. But it should be a March or a November. That's my 2 cents.
I think we have to recognize too that the first report 2 years ago, maybe correct the number, was 62 million project, 62 million, 63.
Yeah, it was.
And then it was 70-ish last year, and now we're at 80. I mean, okay, inflation can slow down or whatever, but if we wait a whole year, we're at 90, and then we're at 95, 100. So we have to keep that in mind too, that if we come to something out of these next couple of weeks that people seem to be behind, we should try to, get that sooner than later.
Yeah, I think it's, there's a divergent process and a convergent process. So the divergent is kind of putting it out there, getting all the ideas, getting as much information as we can and hearing from people. And then at what point you decide to converge on you refining those ideas and narrow it in. And it may be that it happens, like you said, really quickly. I mean, it all could. So I appreciate, the suggestion, go ahead, start moving with an ALTA survey, start getting to see what could be possible if we want to move quickly on land that we already have, which is certainly going to probably be the quickest path. Gather ideas, and it may be that it's pretty much consistent and consensus on what the path forward looks like. What do you need from us, James?
So I guess to summarize, I'm hearing our next steps is we're asking AVG to survey, do due diligence on our existing land, and then we'll find out if our 2 properties are viable options for the project the parameters of the project that we're looking for, right? Like whether it's a pre-K-12 or some other combination, can these 2 properties hold the capacity that is needed? Okay.
Just honoring what you were saying, Stacy, about potential land in the township. Is there a way that we can move forward
and be able to explore that in parallel with this survey. I mean, you mentioned seeing a Google map of the city part and how these are really the only two options. Is there anybody who can just take a look at the township and the utilities, and can we get that going at the same time?
Yeah.
Is that something we want to get going at the same time?
No, I think that's a great idea.
I don't.
No, but certainly if there's anyone who would want to entertain a donation to the schools, we would gladly talk to you.
Cool property.
Yes.
I think the back of my, not to put words in your mouth, what you're saying is even if you could identify vacant pieces of property that have potential for that type of development, is that something? And that, you know, we do have the ability to go into executive session if we do identify, you know, just so that it's easy to talk about property we own because we don't, you know, we're not competitive bidders for it. I think we probably want to be thoughtful about it if we become bidders for properties, so that we're not jacking the price up of taxpayers, right? Resources, but I think the question is more: is there a way for us to identify potential vacant land within either the city or the township? Heard all things that we could, you know, that could. I know. Sure, we'll go crazy here. What's your question? Yeah, that's a great. I mean, I think those are exactly the kind of, you know, thoughts. And there's probably, I'm sure, a commercial broker or somebody that would have ideas too. But it's a great, you know, as much information as we can get as quickly as we can get it.
And maybe that's some of this information that will come out when the community gathers, you know, is an idea like this. So.
You do that in parallel with the survey.
I think, to be perfectly honest, anything from the township or any properties, you know, these are your communities. That would, those types of discussions could come from the community, and then we can engage further. But so I think it might be better for that to come from Huron and the township. Those discussions. Hey, can we explore this land? We can do that. But looking at Google Maps, I'll choose any random farm, you know, and say, yeah, we have 30 acres right here. This is perfect. But it's not for sale, and I don't know that farmer, you know. So that's, to me, I think we've been, you know, you already have Woodlands and you have the high school. It makes sense to do surveys there to figure out, okay, how can we improve access to these sites? Does it make sense, you know, do we have is this the correct grade configuration? That's what I was waiting to speak. When you talked to the community, we came up, there were 3 master plan options in this assessment. That doesn't mean that there couldn't be revised. These will be revised no matter what, whichever master plan that the district comes up with. Do you want to do one PK-12? Do you want to do renovation plus a 612? Do you want to do one thing now and set up the master plan where you tackle the 612 now and you do PK5 later, to spread it out? So it's not a $80 million ask right now. It's, you know, 40, 50 now and 30 you plan for later. That's certainly an option. And then there's an option of you do certain level of renovations at Woodlands, and then you do an addition, and same thing at the high school. So there's multiple different avenues that we can go from here, but we want to hear from you and the community to see which route makes sense to go further. I think we know our homework right now is to get these surveys going, and further study those, look at building footprint on these, and start to lay out the traffic patterns, and then you guys will hear from your community, and we'll go from there.
Just real quickly, I think all these things can kind of go concurrently. You know, we can get stuff started, we can start looking at options, but I think it's crucial if you want to keep pushing these things, not pump the brakes, not push it too fast. I think it's crucial you start getting these community engagements going, because you might hear some things there that are non-negotiable, and we're just gonna be spinning our wheels looking at things. I think it's good to hear what the community thinks. Number one, ultimately they're gonna be the ones giving you the support or not. So I think there's a couple things you're looking at. You know, the scope itself. You know, would they support a K-12? Do they want 2 separate schools? Which sites? Those kind of things. But then it also comes down to the price. Is there a price point where they're not looking, where they'd lose all support? They might support the plan, but it's too much of an ask. And you kind of can start to see where they're going, and we can work from that point once we start to get a better feel for what people are saying. I think would be a smart way to move it forward, maybe.
Do you maybe explain what those community visioning sessions, like how they would work, or what the agenda would look like?
I think we would work in conjunction with you all, see what you're comfortable with bringing out there. I think the first go ahead is maybe just open it up, see what you've heard, see what people are hearing out there first before you even put anything out towards them. Maybe it's an idea, and then come back to them afterwards. You know, up to this point, here's 1, 2, 3 things that have been discussed. Do you like anything from this? You know, what parts of these 3? Let's start with 3 before we go too crazy with them. Give them 3 options out there that have been discussed. The K-12, you know, the different things that we've been kind of looking at. Put those out there. Gauge where they're thinking. You know, does something really strike them as well? You know, do they like this? Do they like this? Is there something, you know, it was brought up with Woodlands site and that sensitivity to the neighborhood. Are you going to get strong pushback there? Are you going to have willingness to, okay, if you can do it this way without completely changing my life, I'm willing to listen? Or are there going to be people out there that say, no way, you know, we have enough. We kind of want to start to hear those things from them. We can start to hear things from that first go around, I think, and then come back, you know, okay, here's what we heard. Maybe we start looking, you like this portion, maybe a part of this portion, maybe we can start to combine them, because it is a moving piece. Obviously, we do one thing to one site, what happens with the other site? If we're building a K-12 or PK-12 on this site, what happens to the high school site? What happens to this existing building? So we're always kind of talking what ifs with these scenarios. And I think we're going to start by giving them 1, 2, 3, you know, here's a starting point. Let's see how they react. And then we kind of adapt in the next meeting from that point forward. Maybe, is that answering it? Kind of a way to.
And that's one way of doing it, and also one way of doing it is like, remember who was on?
Jody.
Jody had mentioned people don't know the conditions of your building too, you know. You want to educate about what you are dealing with on day-to-day basis, and what Watson talked about, what students would like to see happen in the building, you know. So that's an education thing, you know, because that in my opinion that's important too. That people don't know what they don't have kids in here. They don't have kids for 30 some years, you know. So we can work with you and set up a community meeting agenda and how you.
A quick question, maybe could we do some reaching out to? I mean, maybe you want to talk with Fort Clinton High School. They did a renovation in 21. We were just there for honors band. They have some of these areas like Lucy was mentioning for the high school students, and that was recently done. I'm curious if some of these places that have these newer high schools, if they've seen that return to campus, or if they have open campus policies like we do. You know, one thing I've been tossing around my head is if we build this new high school for the full population, and there's still two grades that aren't really going there because they're at the university or at this or at that. Do we scale that back a little? Do we change that a little? But if we put in these nice collaborative areas, you know, for learning and stuff like that, does that return, you know, have those high schools that have the new facilities? It made me think about that when I was at Fort Clinton this weekend. Like, they have, right when you walk in, really nice like media center that has collaborative areas. Not, you know, it's not a whole lot of like library anymore, but a lot of interactive areas for the students and just places to study. And do they see that those students stay on campus more again? No, I mean, I know Fort Clinton's a little bit different than us, but it's just an example. Maybe there's a couple around we can just kind of reach out to. Because if, you know, we're planning for, you know, 9 through 12 or 6 through 12, but two of the grades aren't there most of the time, we should consider that.
Dates set. Did I must confess I haven't been to the new website, but I love the idea of it. That's designated for this. Are the sites set for the community engagement? Because one idea is we could do a walkthrough at the beginning of, or the end of, you know, at the end of the meeting, we could offer a walkthrough if we held the community meeting here, for instance.
Yeah, so yeah, the dates are set, location, the default is here, but if the size of the group or the activity that the group's doing needs like table space and whatnot, cafeteria would be a logical place to move that meeting to. Then if the meeting gets moved outside of this space, we lose the live streaming feature. It's not a portable system. I laugh because it was difficult to move it even from Shawnee to here. So that's an element. But I think if the purpose of the meeting is to hear from the community and get that engagement, they need to be here to do that. You can't hear, it's not a two-way live stream. So, so I don't think that's a big hurdle to say we're not live streaming it because we want to hear you. We have the 3 dates set. 2 are during the week in the evening, and 1 is on a Saturday in the morning at 9. So again, we could say they're all going to be at the high school cafeteria, and you can tour high school, or we could have each meeting at a different building so they can tour those buildings. That makes it more of a series, which is fine. I don't know if the community commitment can give 3 events. The original intent of having the 3 and having different times and different days of the week was so that you make one, you get your voice heard.
I don't like that idea, but potentially could we offer like the first meeting, after the first meeting, there's an option to walk through the high school. After the second meeting, there's an option to walk through Woodlands afterward. Or
it could be that, or it could be at 5, the building's open, you can walk through it, and then you meet at the high school cafeteria for the 6 o'clock start. So, and then I guess at 8, you know, the building's open on Saturday, and then you meet at the high school cafeteria for, and maybe that's the one we do. Maybe the Saturday is the one we tour the high school, so you know, people aren't driving around and stuff. But we could do it that way, just so that keeps us moving on time. And again, we start at 6. We don't know when we end, so then if we're ending at 7 or 7:30, and now people are like, I'm not going to go over there.
Is there a way to is there a way to do some type of like online survey too, just to get feedback? You know, it's a little bit of like free form space, but just to get feedback for people who maybe can't make one of these meetings, but would still like to be heard.
Yeah, and that's kind of where, when, you know, we've now set the site on some due diligence for the properties that we own, while exploring some other properties that could be procured. You know, that'll take several weeks or a month or 2. And so, do we, in the interim, do we do an online survey to gain some interest? I know the city did that for the Main Street study, and at Rotary, and the tennis courts, yeah. And so at Rotary, the city presented, you know, updates for accomplishments in 23, and, you know, visionary for 24. And he noted that in that survey they had like 8 or, I'm looking at you, Julie, but like 800 or 900 respondents. It was a lot, right? So I guess, is that like a well-crafted survey? Something that we do in March while ABG is doing that land due diligence, and these in-person meetings we push to April, and that way we have more information to share. Or no, we want to hear from them now here in March and then continue on. I think we just want to be mindful of people's time, and we want them to participate, so we don't want to ask them too many times to come back, right? So we have to be strategic with that. That's my thoughts.
And I had suggested to James last week about a method for kind of a generative discussion, but pulling ideas out, which is called a World Cafe. So it's a series of tables, and you try to limit the number of people that are at a certain table, 5 to 7 people. There's paper all over the table, there's markers, and there is a central question that is posed. And you can either do it by table, or you could do it for the entire group, that every table is talking about the same topic and generating ideas, and then just jotting them down on there. So then you have a record of all these ideas that are coming out. There is one person that is a host for that to kind of get the conversation going. You have it for 15 minutes or so, and then you get up and take a break, and everybody from the table, the host stays, everybody else breaks, and they go to different tables. So you are going to be with different people. And then maybe there's a second question that covers the entire group. So that is a different generative discussion on certain topics there as a way to pull out ideas. And then at the end, you have this takeaway piece that has all the notes that are on there. You can have some folks report out, maybe the hosts, what were the things they were hearing at the tables that they hosted, as a way to start looking for patterns and themes that were emerging from the participants. It's a way to get everybody has a chance to participate and offer ideas. It's a way to collect. I mean, you could have 100, 150 people there and doing it. You just need enough tables to have everybody sit. It's a way to gather a lot of information from people, and everybody has something to offer.
We lose the live stream, but that's something we could easily accommodate.
Yeah, because it's not, I mean, it wouldn't be, right, something that folks could participate in watching and watching. But if there are those topics that are going to be at the tables, that could be something that goes out in like an open-ended survey, so that people watching, or it can just be live on the website, can be collecting that same information from folks. Encourage them, talk to a couple friends, talk to your neighbors, and talk informally, and then submit your ideas.
I love that concept, because I love the idea of like the energy of all those small conversations happening and the ability for the participation. It's hard to get up in a room full of people and speak. It's a little bit easier if you're sitting down with some coffee and 5 of your neighbors to do that. We see some high schoolers sitting at a table doing that, right?
A World Cafe format that works for me. Yeah, that's good. So
I almost wonder too if there's ways for us to work with like Cynthia and communications to start to like grab phrases and things like that, put them up on, you know, a screen, kind of like big whiteboarding, right? So that, like tweets almost, right? Mm-hmm.
that's good. All right, I can run with that. Yeah. So. Okay.
Oh,
Thanks.
thank you.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
yeah.
Thank you for being
Thanks,
here.
Maybe one of the survey questions could be if a person was willing to be involved in a levy committee.
I think that list is like we've covered it. Maybe not
I
correct.
think we touched on everything in there.
Little 1, 2, phase 3, 1.
Back to
7.
1. Okay.
Okay. All right, that's good.
Okay. So are we good with the section with 9? Do we need to review the funding options specifically?
I don't know how we could do that.
So we.
Yeah, okay, okay.
I think the only thing I'll say on that is much like you said before about, we don't have a set plan on what we're doing and similar to this, the funding, I think there's several, there are limited options just by law, but I think we're exploring ways to be as creative as possible and also take in mind, in the past we've just looked at property tax levies, but there are other options on the table. You can mix and match those options, and probably we'll drill down on some demographics and some modeling to lay out scenarios like if this, what would the person who makes $50,000 a year and owns a $150,000 home, what does it do for you? That sort of thing. So that, again, I think we can know in a very transparent and practical way what's being asked of people.
Okay, so next we have an executive session, but I will jump ahead before we do that. Just to note the next meeting dates, these are the community sessions. They're listed as special meetings since they weren't originally scheduled when we set the master calendar back in January. So we have a special meeting on March 7th at 6 p.m., special meeting March 9th at 9 a.m., that's that Saturday meeting, and a special meeting on March 11th at 6 p.m. The next regular board meeting will be Monday, March 18th at 6 p.m. here. That and all those dates will be on the website or already are on the website, I think. So any other items otherwise? All right, next, I am looking for a motion to go into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, and or compensation of a public employee and to review a tentative collective bargaining agreement.
Awesome.
Mr. Lombardo?
Mrs. Henners?
Yes.
Mr. Rager?
Yes.
Dr. LeFay?
Yes. And we do not anticipate action afterwards. James, just no action afterwards, right?
I don't.
Okay, no action afterwards. Thank you, everybody.
Grant, thanks for being here. Did we scare you away? You're gonna come back. Okay, good. All right.
You had to quit yawning to say that.
Not always. We'll have like a small mini fridge of like whatever drink Yolani needs.
Celsius or whatever.
Yeah, we got the horrible ones.
Yeah.
The placebo type one.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a good time. Like a lot of interesting stuff is happening. We'll probably put it okay, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's perfect. Like, where are they? Like, it'll get interesting.